There are some things in life that you simply can't do alone. We live in a culture, however, that celebrates independence. In fact, it's super important as you're raising children to help them understand, hey man, some of this is totally up to you. I think the pressure that parents put on kids sometimes to fully be independent. But oftentimes, for us, the challenge is really learning to be dependent on God and also learning to be dependent on other people. In Exodus 17, God gives us a picture of what some of this dependent relationship looks like. And it ultimately tells us, why is community so important to us? Why does it matter? We shouldn't live life as isolated individuals, but instead, we should live together as His people under the banner of Christ. Now, here's the dramatic part. In Exodus 17, the Amalekites attacked the Israelites at a place called Rephidim. Moses tells Joshua to choose some men and go and fight a battle against the Amalekites. Now, meanwhile, Moses goes up this hill with his staff, which seems like sort of a weird thing when there's a battle going on. But here's really what's going on. Moses, when he holds his staff into the air, the Israelites begin to win the battle. But when his arms get tired and his staff drops, the Amalekites start to gain ground in this war. Moses begins to realize that this is not something that he's going to be able to do on his own. So Aaron and Hur, they step in. They actually put a stone underneath Moses so that he can sit down, and each of them begin to take turns holding up the arms of Moses so that when the staff is raised, the Israelites can win the battle. Eventually, Joshua and the army end up defeating the Amalekites at Rephidim. Afterwards, Moses builds an altar and names it, "The Lord is my banner." He's saying that the only reason we won this battle is because of the Lord. See, this is the heart of this passage. Even Moses recognizes and understands this. The man who spoke face to face with God couldn't do life alone. Without Aaron and Hur, his arms would have dropped, and ultimately the Israelites would have lost the battle. Now, Brian mentioned this, and this is a story I really want us to hone in on in today's devotional. It's the same with us. All of us can have a deep walk with God, one in which we feel like we're intentionally hearing the voice of God on a day-to-day basis, sometimes even a moment-to-moment basis. And while there is never going to be a substitute for that type of face-to-face connection with God, what we have to recognize is that there's got to be people in this war, in this battle, with us. In fact, I think it's so crucial for us to understand this point. If you were to ask your group who won this battle, there's probably several answers, but the real answer is God. God won the battle for the Israelites, but each individual person had a part to play. If you think of Moses as the leader of God's people, who was anointed by God to do that, Moses was responsible for holding the staff up, but Moses physically was getting tired. Bearing a burden for that period of time is difficult. And so Aaron and Hur step in to support Moses, to take turns to make sure that his arms don't fall. They played a part as well. But not only those three people, but also Joshua. Joshua was the commander of the Israelite army. Joshua had a specific role to play. He was commander. He gave orders. He gave instructions. And so in the midst of this battle being won, it's important to understand that each of those four people that we looked at, Moses, Aaron, Hur, and Joshua, they each had a distinct role and a distinct part to play, even though all of them were dependent on God to win this battle. This is the same thing in our life. Community is such a powerful thing, but real victory comes from God. He is alone the one who fights for us. He is the banner under which we all align ourselves. He is ultimately the one that unites communities together. This reminds me of a trip one time I took when I was much younger and in much better shape. We went to a place called Lake Jocassee, and we were going to canoe about 7 miles out to go camping, which sounds majestic and amazing, except for on that particular day, the wind was blowing between 15 and 25 miles an hour. I don't know if you've ever been on a lake, which seems very calm and serene when the wind is blowing like that. Eventually, the waves are like cresting up over our canoe. It took us probably about 45 minutes to even just get down the resistance against the wind and the waves, just so we could start making progress in the lake. By the time we actually got to our camping spot, I remember getting out of the canoe and literally just laying on the ground, thankful that we had made it. In the middle of this journey, what we had to figure out is each of us, in addition to just learning how to row a canoe, we had different roles to play when it came to fighting against the wind and the waves. And I think community is just like that. God has created you with a specific plan and purpose, and you have gifts and talents and strengths and weaknesses. But He's also surrounded you with a group of people who are unique and different than you are. And when we all can get to this place where the projects, the relationships, the movement that we're making in our life really comes down to being under the banner of Christ, that's when we really start to see progress. And so here's the thing though. Some of you who are in this group, I know some of you, man, you have a difficult time asking anyone for help on anything. I can imagine if you were in Moses' seat and it was up to you, especially I'm looking at you men in groups now, if it were up to you, you would not ask anybody for help. You would be straining, pushing, trying to find ways. You'd be shifting your posture, trying to figure out how can I hold this staff up for longer. And yet all Moses really had to do was accept the help that was offered to him by people who loved and cared for him. Sometimes that's super difficult. I'll also tell you that there are some people who they're so zoned in on their own thing and their own role that they can't really even see the things that are happening outside of their own projects and tasks. And I think no matter where you're at on that spectrum, I think it's important that we understand that each of us has a role to play in community. See, community doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't happen by accident. It takes each of us taking a step of vulnerability towards one another. It takes each of us submitting first to Christ under His lordship, and then second, it means submitting to each other, to serve one another. In our church, we don't want to just get you connected. We want you to take another step. We want you to take a deeper step. In fact, it would be good for your small group to talk through what is that deeper step? What does it look like for us to take a deeper step as a community as a whole? What would it look like for us to open up more vulnerably, to let someone else hold up your arms when you might be struggling? And some of you, are you willing to hold up somebody else's arms when things get difficult? Now listen, I know that feels risky, but it is so powerful when there are people who are vulnerable with one another, who share what's going on in their life, and as they seek to really express what unconditional love looks like. Ultimately, this story points to Jesus. Jesus truly is our banner. He was, like Moses' staff, on the cross, lifted up so that each of us could receive the victory that God has for us. Jesus ultimately, when He was lifted up on the cross, He took on sin, He faced an obedient death, and He took the victory for each of us. And now we're united to Him in His body. Paul talks about this in 1 Corinthians 12, that we're many members, one body in Christ. So none of us can say, I don't need you. I can do this all on my own. The scriptures tell us that that is not how God designed us. He calls each one of us to hold each other up together and reflect God's strength to the world. So here's the question I'd like you to wrestle with as a group tonight, or today, depending on when you're meeting. When life feels heavy, is it harder for you to ask someone else for help, or is it more difficult for you to notice that someone around you needs help? And why do you think that is? See, this isn't just about finding a group of people that you meet with on a regular basis. This is about being willing to step up and step into a deeper relationship with Christ and with other people. And sometimes that means simply saying, I can't do this alone. I need your help. Other times it means looking up and seeing someone, a brother or sister in Christ, who need you to step in and really offer the help that they need. Under the banner of Christ, we don't just survive. We share in the victory that He's given to us, and we live an abundant, thriving, incredible life because Jesus offers it to us. Hope you have an incredible discussion. See you next time.